Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Victory Road's World Cup of VGC. I'm still Stefan. With me now is Jamie Boyt. We are going to be bringing you a couple of Argentina versus Poland games. Going to be pretty cool. But how are you doing today, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm doing good. So I've had a little bit of a break, but it's really good to be back. And yeah, we're going to be having a double header here between Argentina and Poland. So don't get to see that too often in these. It's top 16 is still early enough, but yeah, going to have two matches from one round in a row. It's going to be very interesting to see.
It's going to be really neat. We've got a couple of really strong players coming up and a couple of players that are, very well known in the scene. First things first, let's just have a look at the overall match because, best of 7, things have started off pretty strong for Poland. 3-0 already. They are one singular set away from victory. Now, we can see Maciek was able to win against Juan Pablo Cambon. And then Juan Salerno, one of the favorites on Argentina, dropping to Alexandra. And then Simon Voidat also getting a win over Sebastian Escalante. That's two really big names of the Argentinian team already going down. So everything is on the line. Backs against the wall for their representative in this match, Alejo Humphreys, who is doing pretty well this season. I mean, he was on the team last year, but didn't make it into the top 16 roster. But this time around, 3-1 in the World Cup so far. And he's doing well. So he's a good hope for them to try to keep their hopes alive here in this top 16 set.
Yeah, he's going to be facing a very tough opponent in Filip Idczak as well. Managed to get a really good result in the very first region that we had of the return to the season with the Groudon team. That was a very cool team, and we saw a lot of iterations of that afterwards as well. Initially, Filip broke going with that Bronzong. We saw Slowbro pop up on that team as well. We see Mimikyu just recently as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see if he's going to be running something very similar to that, or if he's going to be trying something completely different.
Yeah, and of course, we did see in the preview that he is going to be bringing that Mimikyu variation, the same team that just won Devon Singh his match 2-0 over Benjamin. So overall, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Devon and Filip are very close friends. They build together quite a lot. So not too surprising to see them bringing the same team here, but we'll have to see if it manages to claim another scalp here against Alejo Humphreys and indirectly the entire Argentinian side based on this being a potentially deciding match. And it's going to be interesting to see just how this goes down. Alejo Humphreys was a member of the 2021 World Cup side. Other than that, he's still a bit newer when it comes to trying to get some of those results. He did start playing in 2020. A lot of the 2020 people, especially the Latin American region, haven't had that many live tournaments that they've been able to go to. Filip, on the other hand, though, in Europe, there were quite a few regionals this time around. Was able to get top 4 at that Liverpool regional, as you mentioned, top 16 at Lille as well, and top 8 in the Victory Road May Season 12 Challenge. So a very consistent player in this format.
Absolutely, and going to have to be just consistent for one more game to get Poland into that top 8. Alejo does have to defeat Filip to keep the hopes alive, get that first win on the board for Argentina, and even if Alejo is able to win, then we've got that next match coming up as well. So Argentina do need to be winning all of the games coming up. Poland just need that last one, so you can see the teams there. We've got the pretty standard Swordfish coming out from Alejo, and we do have the Groudon for Filip, with that Mimikyu as the adaptation over the Bronzong that he initially had.
Alejo bringing out one of the more standard Zacian Kai Ogre teams. This is the same 6 that Agati used to get top 2 in NAIC, finishing in that runner-up spot in a very close set. It's a very solid team. One thing that I was testing this for Worlds, and one thing that I basically figured that this team is more all around than the Amoonguss version. It's better into most things than the Amoonguss version. It just doesn't have much of a Trick Room matchup. And that's not really going to be a huge deal, I mean, or specifically Palkia Kali Ice, right? But that's not an issue here. Phillips brought the standard Groudon Yveltal, and I think this team from Alejo Humphreys has a very decent matchup into it.
Yeah, but then you do have the Mimikyu that can absolutely set the Trick Room there, so you don't really have a very easy way through that Mimikyu as well. You got to hit it twice because of that disguise, and Zacian is probably going to be the fastest Pokemon on the field. That would be the Pokemon you want to hit the Mimikyu to be able to knock it out in one shot. So I have to see if Mimikyu is going to be the Pokemon to try and get that Trick Room going, or if there's going to be a different game plan for Filip. You've got the Regieleki and the Venusaur that are very good into this team as well.
All right, so with that, let's get on into it. Mimikyu Yveltal, the same lead we saw twice in a row out of Devin. It's going to come out of Filip, and here we have the double genie on the other side here for Alejo Humphreys. Both of them playing a bit of a setup heavy lead here. You know, you've got the Intimidate, you've got the potential for Snarl on the Yveltal, Trick Room, Tailwind, a lot of different ways that this could go. Both players just trying to keep probably their bigger pieces in the back here.
Yeah, and it's the only real way to stop the Mimikyu Trick Room, unless there is a taunt on that Tornadus. You'd probably have to Dynamax the Landorus and get a little bit of chip, maybe with an Icy Wind with the Tornadus to break that disguise as well. You saw the Dark Aura on the Yveltal go first before the Landorus, so that is a pretty speedy Yveltal. So if you do go for Trick Room and there is no Tailwind set on the Tornadus side, then Landorus would still be able to move first before that Yveltal, even if the Trick Room is set up there. So yeah, it's going to be, oh, that looks like the Icy Winds and it missed the Mimikyu.
Yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. They're not going to quite break that disguise. It will be able to slow down the Yveltal to underspeed that Landorus at the very least. And here comes the Avalancha coming on in. Bit weird to me as an English speaker that Avalancha isn't Avalanche, but gonna get the break there on the Mimikyu. Will we see any flinches coming out of that? Well, first things first, Yveltal. Oh, is that a double flinch there?
That probably had to be a double flinch, yes. I will take back completely what I said in that previous turn. There is a secondary way of stopping the Trick Room. It is not having to go for the Dynamax with Landorus. Rock Slide, of course, bringing the way always and stopping that Mimikyu from going for the attack. As well as the Yveltal, you've got some brilliant chip onto that Yveltal as well. Not enough to be able to pick up the knockout with another Rock Slide and Icy Wind. It is sitting just above half, but you should probably be able to stop the Trick Room on the Mimikyu at this point. So you did get a little bit of misfortune with that Icy Wind drop, but the Rock Slide really paying that back.
Incineroar about to reveal whether that's White Herb or on that the Landorus, and generally on this team it does tend to be. There it is. No Incineroar Intimidates coming out this time around. The Hurricane will miss. The Rock Slide, though, going to double connect once again. Is Mimikyu going to successfully do something this time around? Yes, it is. Okay, Trick Room does end up going up on turn 2 here. So Filip finally finding a little bit of momentum potentially, but still a lot of chip on 3 of his Pokemon, essentially for free.
Yeah, it's a reasonable amount of chip, but now you can actually start getting the momentum going, and now you are in the Trick Room environment that you wanted. Mimikyu probably would have still survived that Hurricane, because Mimikyus tend to be built pretty bulkily, and if it is the same Mimikyu that we saw survive that Kira Max Hailstorm, then it almost certainly would have been able to survive the Hurricane. So unless it flinched again with the Rock Slide, then that Trick Room was definitely going to be going up. And now you can start going on the offensive. You've been intimidated with the Mimikyu, so it's not going to be doing too much damage with any play roughs. You got in the Incineroar at this point. You can go for some Flare Blitz for some big damage, or you can just start to pivot yourself around with those parting shots and get in your actual Trick Room Sweeper.
Well, double protect coming on out here from Alejo, just opting to try to stall a single turn of Trick Room to start things off. That's the parting shot coming out from that Incineroar. And wait, is that Burning Jealousy? I don't speak Spanish, but that looked like fuego.
Yeah, I also don't speak Spanish at all, so usually I have to go by the animations, but if you're attacking into a double protect, then it's quite tricky to be able to see that. So just sorting out the turn of the Trick Room makes perfect sense here. You want to be getting your Pokemon into the speed tier that you want, and Alejo does not have Pokemon that wants to be in Trick Room at all. So going for double protects, stalling out, go for the offensive this turn, and then you can go for maybe another double protect on the next turn. It's a perfectly viable way of sorting out the Trick Room, especially because there isn't too much offensive pressure on Filip's side of the field at the moment.
Oh, we do have the Kyogre coming on in here. Looks like it was apparently Will-O-Wisp, but yeah, well, instant parting shot there onto the Kyogre. It's not going to be applying too much offensive pressure here at -1, but really I feel like you're just trying to leverage Kyogre's bulk to stall out Trick Room turns at this point, so I don't think Alejo cares too much about that. Gonna be interesting to see just what the Tornadus is going for here, but hey, if it's going for a Hurricane, that's all of a sudden only going to be 50% accurate with the Groudon coming in, setting the sun.
Yeah, that's a really good switch in for that Groudon. Absolutely what you wanted there. Yeah, there's the Willows coming out from Mimikyu into the Kyogre. Not going to matter too much. Of course, every little bit of chip helps in reducing the damage output from water spouts that can come out, but there's another dodge on the Mimikyu from that Hurricane. So this Tornadus just really cannot hit the Mimikyu at all.
Yeah, it's dodged 2 Hurricanes and an Icy Wind at this point. So the Mimikyu is going full Neo style. Not quite able to dodge that flinch on turn 1, though, unfortunately enough. Looks like the Landorus is going to be coming on in, getting another Intimidate. Really solid Intimidate cycling here by Alejo. One of the things that I found when I did use a Landorus team or with Swordfish is that I find it a little bit difficult to keep Landorus alive while you're Intimidate cycling. It's not quite as defensively solid as the Incineroar is. So, you know, it's always cool to be able to actually successfully bring in that Lando over and over. Was that a miss, or was that a but it failed on the Wisp?
I'm pretty sure I saw the same words as Will-O-Wisp before, and it did not connect with anything, so I assume it would be a Will-O-Wisp miss, unfortunately, there. There is a weird game. It is a lot of moves not connecting at all. Of course, you can always connect with that water spout being 100% accurate, and because it was a sword dance coming out from the Groudon, instead that Kyogre was still a pretty high HP, so that even in the sun, water spout was doing a significant amount of damage. But we're pretty much through the Trick Room at this point. You can just go for a double protect if you want to stall out the final turn, maybe even stall out a turn of the Dynamax that the Groudon could be going for as well, because you would assume that it is the Pokemon that wants to go for Dynamax, especially if you've Swords Dance, and with both of the restricteds at just above half HP anyway, you're not going to be able to make the most of the doubling of the HP, so you do want to be going on the offensive here, especially with that increased stage of attack from the Groudon, and it is going to be going for the Dynamax in this last turn of Trick Room.
All right, interesting situation as well. Just to note that the Groudon taking 40% in Sun from a -1 Kyogre feels like it's maybe built to have a little bit of speed investment to not have to function in the Trick Room mode. Not 100% sure, but I was a little bit surprised at how much damage that took.
It's just a double protect, stall out the Trick Room very, very nicely here. Although you did switch in the Velpla on Filip's side of the field, so we've seen that's already outspeeding the Landorus. That will mean it will outspeed the Kyogre as well. It's to override the Sun as on the ground side, because you're going for that Max Rockfall into the Kyogre. You're not going for the Max Quake, just expecting that there could be a Tornado switch in, just covering for that option quite nicely and getting some good chip onto that Kyogre.
All right, so Trick Room over. That does mean that the Yveltal is the fastest thing on the side of the field, though. If we remember, it did require an Icy Wind drop in order for the Landorus to outspeed it. So the Landorus probably going to want to max here. Airstream onto the Yveltal with that low HP may well be enough to pick that up. Landorus has a very, very high attack stat, even without the assistance of an item like a Life Orb or something. And if this does pick up the Yveltal, then Alejo will be in a pretty solid spot. You know, at this point as well, Kyogre is almost always going to be faster than Groudon, especially on a team running Tailwind. So if you can stall out the Groudon Dynamax, get your opponent down to 2 Pokemon, and then bring the Kyogre in, you're probably just going to win the game by clicking Water Spout, even with the chip that the Kyogre's taken.
Yeah, Water Spout's probably as strong as Origin Pulse at this point, so it's going to be pretty close, and you probably want to be going for the accuracy as well, as you've missed so many moves already, and it's just going to be resetting the potential of that rain by switching out the Kyogre into the Tornado. You are going for the Dynamax on Alejo's side of the field, or with the Landorus, so if it is going for that Max Airstream, like you said, into the Yveltal, probably going to be enough to pick up the KO, and it's going to be able to make you the most use of the Dynamax here, going for the Dynamax with a full HP Pokemon against Filip's one that was already down to half.
Ooh, and that's a wasted Max Guard there by Filip, unfortunately. Well, that's a big amount of damage, though, onto that Landorus. Maybe foul play there. But here comes that Airstream. It's going to pick up the Yveltal KO. And all of a sudden, things seem to be going from bad to worse for Filip here. Losing out on a turn of Dynamax from that Max Guard and losing one of his 2 restricteds in one fell swoop.
Yeah, at least you get to break the Focus Sash that is on the Tornadus, because you set up the Sandstorm on the turn before with the Max Rockfall from the Groudon. But yeah, that's not ideal for Filip's side of the field. You get to bring the Mimikyu at least, but it's taken so much damage here that even if you switch in the Incineroar and sacrifice your last turn of Dynamax, Mimikyu's probably still going down to that max move, so you can very safely put a stop to that Trick Room, and then you've got your Airstreams going with the Landorus. The Kyogre will outspeed both the Groudon and the Incineroar, so this is still a pretty comfortable position for the Landorus. You've got Burn the White Herb at least, so if you do switch in the Incineroar, you'll be reducing the damage output a little bit, and that is exactly what we're seeing from Filip here. Going for the Mimikyu, switch in immediately, straight back out into the Incineroar to get that Intimidate down.
All right, so another question is going to be whether or not the Instant is running a Shucka Berry. If it is, it's going to survive this hit very, very cleanly. If it's not, even with the Intimidate, Landorus is pretty strong. We've seen a little bit of chip, but there goes the Shuckleberry. In fact, good information coming out for Alejo as well, though. You know, things like Shuckleberry on the Incin, especially in this kind of a developed format where, you know, there's a lot of different items that Incineroar could be running. It's really valuable information to have going into a game too. So Alejo is going to be very, very happy with every additional bit of information he's able to glean from this game.
And we're going to see the Max Rockfall once again come out from this Groudon into the Landorus though, and it's doing a sizable amount of damage because of that earlier Swords Dance, but not enough to pick up the KO on that Landorus, so it is going to be able to go for another max move, and it's not even going to be in range of the Fake Out come out from the Incineroar as well, so you're probably going to be able to pick up the KO on that Incineroar, and as soon as you get one more KO, then that limits the switching options for that Groudon, and if you've got them down to 2 Pokemon, you can just switch in your Kyogre at any point in the rain and go for that Water Spout.
Looks like Tailwind's going to be clicked here by Alejo. I feel like at this point, the only thing you're doing with the Tornadus is waiting for it to go down for the free switch into the Kyogre. So it doesn't really matter what the Tornadus clicks, because it's just going to come down to whether or not the Kyogre is able to close out the game. Alejo going to be able to use this last max move to remove the Incineroar if he so desires as well. The Mimikyu's probably chipped enough that a switch out's not going to save Filip. The Mimikyu would probably also go down, I would imagine. We do have to remember the Groudon, though, still at +1 from that Swords Dance. So, you know, maybe if it lands like Rock Slide into both, could be enough to survive. The Mimikyu probably going to be pretty bulky. Protect coming out as well. But unfortunately, once again, Protect is not going to matter because for the second time, the Protect is not protecting from anything at all.
No, and so we'll have to see if the Max Quake is enough to pick up the Mimikyu. If it is, then Alejo just wins the Weather Wall right now, and yeah, it is enough to pick up the KO on that Mimikyu, even though it was intimidated earlier by that Incineroar. It brings Filip down to Groudon and Incineroar. You will be able to get your Kyogre in the rain, and you'll be able to go for just a Water Spout and KO both Pokemon. There were no Max Quakes come out from the Groudon at all. It was just 2 Max Rock Falls and a Max Guard, so you haven't even boosted your special defense to potentially be able to survive. So Alejo just needs to just allow one of his Pokemon to get knocked out and get a switch in to that Kyogre for free.
I really like the idea to go for the Tailwind as well. You know, Groudon 99.999% of the time is going to be slower than Kyogre, but hey, let's make sure, right? You know, it's one of those things where you're thinking to yourself, how can I possibly lose this game? I'm so far ahead. And then you're like, okay, I mean, I guess if they're running Jolly Groudon, I can still lose this game. So let's just remove that potential loss condition. I like that a lot. And that's just going to be a forfeit from Filip for game number 1. Honestly, it was pretty clean from Alejo, but given how things started for Filip, I feel like he played that pretty reasonably well. Like, he did his best to come back from that. A lot of misses, double flinch on turn 1. But at the end of the day, not quite enough here. I personally feel like he could take that game, though, and go, all right, you know what? I played pretty well. The game said no. I can definitely win this game number 2.
Yeah, I think maybe the crucial part was 2 protects, a Max Guard and a protect that just wasn't attacked into, and the other slot was damaged instead. So you used up one of your max moves that you had available going for a Max Guard that wasn't targeted at all, and it was a +1 as well. You'd be able to do some massive damage. We saw Max Rockfall did over 50% to that Landorus, even in its Dynamax form, so a little bit of wasted damage there, and that could have been the key to be able to pick up a knockout to win the Weather War, because as soon as you're down to 2 Pokemon, then you can't switch out anymore, and the opposing Pokemon will be able to switch in and get that weather, and as soon as that happens, then you know the game's over.
Well, a bit of a switch up in the leads. We have the Incineroar Mimikyu lead from Filip, as opposed to the Zacian Landorus lead from Alejo. Intimidate's going down on both sides. It's going to be pretty nice to have a bit of an Intimidate off on the opposing Zacian. That's always good to have for the beginning of the game. But, you know, I actually really quite like this lead from Alejo, because regardless of if the Incineroar fakes something out, it's still going to be taking more damage than Alejo is going to be taking. And if it doesn't fake something out, Sacred Sword plus Rock Slide may be enough to pick up the Incin.
We'll have to see. That might be what we're seeing from Alejo's side of the field. Yeah, there is the Sacred Sword and the Rock Slide. And yeah, the White Herb was consumed. That is at neutral, but the Incineroar does survive. So very, very nicely trained Incineroar there. Did not go for the fake out, so most likely going to be seeing something like a parting shot so they can get out. No, not at all. There is the Burning Jealousy that we wanted to see. And it is going to burn the Zacian because of the interaction of this technically being the turn it got the boost of its Intrepid Swords. So only works on the very first turn for the Burning Jealousy. Doesn't happen any other time, but really nice Burning Jealousy there. And you do get the Trick Room through the flinch, so a much better start for Filip here.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's such a weird interaction that only works on turn number 1 or on a switch in there. But yeah, it's a nice bit of using that information or using that knowledge of the way the interaction goes down. Filip playing very well there. Burning Jealousy on the Incineroar, I think, is also something that's a little bit different from what we saw on Devon's side. At the very least, I don't think Devon clicked it at all, so maybe a couple of different variations on those two teams. And with Trick Room going up now, Filip's Incineroar is going to be slower than both of the opposing Pokemon, so it's just going to go for a Flare Blitz. And is this going to remove? No, it's not quite going to remove because of the Intimidate from the Landorus, but still, a lot of damage going down onto that Zacian.
Yeah, and that gives you a switch into something in the back that you want to be sweeping in Trick Room as well. So just a sack into the Landorus, probably a Widow's there, just failing into the Protect. But now the Zacian gets to go for the Behemoth Blade into the Mimikyu. And since that Disguise was broken with a Rock Slide, it is still able to survive because of that burn. Wow. Clutch burn coming from the Burning Jealousy to allow that Mimikyu to survive. I thought it would be KO'd even with the Intimidate and the burn.
Yeah, Groudon's going to be able to come in now for Filip as well, and this is going to start to apply quite a bit of pressure. We have a potential Wisp onto the Landorus, making it really awkward for Alejo to Dynamax the Landorus, and the Zacian is so low that I feel like Wisp plus Precipice Blades is just a pretty safe thing to click here to try to not waste one of your turns of Dynamax unnecessarily. Of course, misses have been a factor in this set, and clicking Precipice Blades might be a little bit of a scary prospect, so we'll have to see what Filip chooses to go for here on this turn.
Yeah, Precipice Blades would definitely put a stop to that Zacian for sure. And with the Landorus switching out as well and switching into the Incineroar, Precipice Blades would do some nice damage. Do you prioritize going for the damage immediately, or do you want to offset this Intimidate that could be coming up from the Incineroar with a Sword Stance that we have seen already? Especially because you do have both Intimidates available for Alejo's side of the field. You do want to be offsetting that somewhat. Of course, Willow is going to fail into that Fire type Incineroar there, but there is a double dodge there coming out from the Precipice Blades, so very unfortunate there, but Behemoth Blade is still going to be able to be fired off into the Mimikyu, and with that last little bit of damage, that is going to be a KO.
Yeah, all right. Double miss from the Groudon there essentially ends the Weather War here. Kyogre, if it's in the back, will win the Weather War as soon as it comes in. Just 2 Pokemon left here for Filip. Yveltal joins the fray. It is both restricted. We do have Trick Room available, so maybe these 2 Pokemon can make something happen here, but this is going to be a very uphill battle.
Yeah, the Incineroar is going to be able to just switch out here, get the Intimidate cycling again, so you can really put a stop to that Groudon. And because we are in the Trick Room, then the Kyogre should be underspeeding that Yveltal as well. So this is now a very awkward position for Filip. You intimidated, so you need to Sword Stance, but if you just go for a Sword Stance, then that opens up just the potential of the Intimidate switch, Intimidate cycling, which we are seeing here. At least it's the U-turn coming out from the Incineroar, pretty much confirming the Assault Vest, so you're not going to be taking the drops from the parting shot that you would be seeing, so you just get to switch in the Landorus at this point and Intimidate even further on the Groudon, and then eventually be able to just bring in your Kyogre at some point in the rain.
Yeah, alright, so let's see. How many turns of Trick Room do we have left? I think it's 2 now, right? So
should be 2, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I feel like Alejo just tries to stall out the remaining turns of Trick Room. Maybe even go for a Dynamax on the Yveltal to try to get an Airstream on the last turn of Trick Room to try to maybe outspeed some things. You know, Dynamax Yveltal, bit of a scary thing when you don't have the Zacian anymore. Double KO comes out here this turn, and all of a sudden, things aren't looking quite as bad anymore.
Yeah, that's the turn you wanted, and a very nice foul play into that Landorus switching, catching the Intimidate cycle that we did end up seeing. The Weather War has been won, so it doesn't really matter that Alejo's down to his last 2 Pokemon, but Dynamax is still available for both players here, so it will be interesting to see which Pokemon is going to be going for the Dynamax. If you go for the Groudon, then you can get a Max Quake boost up before the Kyogre is able to attack because of the last turn at Trick Room, and then you'll be able to avoid any of the fake outs that could be coming up from the Incineroar as well. But if you Dynamax the Yveltal, then you can start going for some Airstreams to put your Groudon faster. If you just go for the Protect on Groudon and Airstream, then that will put you faster and you can start going for Precipice Blades. So it's going to be an interesting decision here for Filip. It's a pretty obvious one for Alejo to go for the Dynamax with the Kyogre. It'd be pretty interesting to see an Incineroar Dynamax here, but the Kyogre would be putting on huge pressure. So do you want the Max Quake or do you want the Airstream?
Yeah, the other problem as well is that the Groudon's already sitting at -3 attack, but the Incineroar is significantly slower than what I assume is an Assault Vest Yveltal, so it's free for a parting shot to go off into that as well. So both potential Dynamaxes for Filip are limited in the amount of actual damage that they can put out. It's going to be all about the secondary effects, whether it be special defense boosts from a Max Quake, or maybe you go for Max Airstream to try to outspeed things and get the out with Rock Slide flinches. Like, there's an out here for Filip, but it might not be a particularly favorable one.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like the Groudon is the option here for the Dynamax. That Kyogre is going for the Dynamax before the Dynamax that could be coming out from Filip's side of the field, because you don't really want to be going for the Dynamax with the Pokemon that is intimidated so many times. Yveltal is nice and fresh here, and it is going to be outspeeding both the Pokemon when the Trick Room is run out. Especially with this Dynamax, it would easily be able to shrug off a Max Geyser if it is carrying that Assault Vest as well, so going to be a very nice option for that Yveltal to be able to go on the offensive here.
All right, big turn here, final turn of Trick Room. I imagine it has to be an Airstream coming out from that Yveltal. I like the Protect coming out from the Groudon as well, just make sure that it lives to fight another day. Fake Out not going to have any effect. Finally, a Protect from a Groudon is accomplishing something here. But there is the Max Geyser. Let's see, I mean, he's going into the Yveltal. It's a good call there. Definitely Assault Vest on the Yveltal, but it's still going to go down to just one more Max Geyser.
And that's not even a two-shot from the Airstream onto the Incineroar. At least you get to go for the extra little bit chip with the Precipice Blades if you go for another Airstream and Precipice Blades, and then you can deal with the Kyogre maybe later on. But now you've gone for the Dynamax with the Yveltal. Snarl is not an option into the opposing Kyogre, and based on that damage, it should be able to pick up another knockout on the Yveltal with just another Max Geyser. So it's still looking like it's in the Kyogre's favor. Maybe you can get some Precipice Blade critical hits at this point, because it's really not going to be doing too much damage at all to the opposing Kyogre. You can go for at least some physical Max Darknesses off the Foul Play, which should be a bit more effective into the opposing Kyogre. But Kyogre's still just sitting really pretty here, especially since it's still at full HP.
Yeah, that looks like an Assault Vest Incineroar as well, based on the moveset it's running. We saw a Bug move in there, which is definitely going to be U-turn, and also just based off of the fact that it's taking very minimal damage from Max Airstream. Swords Dance is going to come up here from the Groudon, which we did see the Max Geyser going into the Yveltal once again, so maybe? I mean, it's still -1 though. Like, this is going to be such an uphill battle for this Groudon without the help of its trusty companion Yveltal, who is now removed from this plane of existence.
I don't think even critical hit Precipice Blades would knock out the Kyogre, even if you stall out the last turn of Dynamax to Protect and then try and get a critical hit there. Just to Throat Chop to do some extra damage to the opposing Groudon, but you just really get to go for a Water move in the rain at this point and be able to KO the Groudon. So probably going to be a Protect to stall out the last turn of the Dynamax here, and then try and get some huge damage with the Precipice Blades that is probably not going to be huge enough, given that it's been intimidated so much. The Swords Dance isn't going to be able to offset that enough.
Well, here comes the Protect. We already know that's not an Assault Vest Groudon, though, and usually this is a Mystic Water Kyogre, so I'm curious if this kills. I don't think it will, but I feel like there's a slight chance it might. Oh my god.
That was close to a slight chance, for sure. Absolutely. And so, yeah, there's the Citrus Berry coming out from the Groudon. That was a very common item back when we just had one restricted Pokemon available. Then we saw its shift to Assault Vest pretty much exclusively, so it is nice to see some other items coming back. Like the Groudon we saw in the World's Finals as well was White Turb instead of the Assault Vest. This one's going to be the Citrus Berry once again, so nice to see that coming back for some of these matches. But the Groudon really needs to still get a critical hit Precipice Blades onto the Kyogre, and that even be enough to pick up the KO, because there was just no damage done to the opposing Kyogre here. And to add insult to injury, the Precipice Blades did not even connect with the Kyogre. So it's just going to be able to click the Ice Beam button here and pick up the knockout on that Groudon and take the first win for Argentina.
Yeah, so Alejo keeping Argentina's hopes and dreams alive here. Filip, I mean, sometimes the game says no, Jamie. We've all been there. And I feel like this was definitely, I feel like Alejo played really, really well in this set. Nothing to take away from Alejo, but the game did kind of say no to Filip today.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like a Rock Slide Flinch turn 1 when you're trying to set up Trick Room is never ideal to come back from. And yeah, the Precipice Blades is always that shaky accuracy once again. But then there was just no damage done to the Kyogre at all throughout that game, and it just was allowed to go for 3 powerful Max Geysers completely unopposed. And you saw even Assault Vest Dynamax Invertible was still being two-shot at the range it was, so there wasn't too much in that position when you've allowed your ground to be intimidated that much. You had the potential to go for many sword stances. It was on the field for so many turns. That could have been like 2 or 3 sword stances potentially, and you got the airstream so that then the Precipice Blades would be able to KO. But then that's it, even if it connects anyway.
Yeah. So, always the question with Precipice Plays. You could always put yourself into a position where you should win, but, it's never a guarantee with a move like that. Even if you're running Wide Lens Groudon, still doesn't hit 100% accuracy. So, overall, that makes things 3-1 now for Poland. Now, Poland, a single win will be enough to see them through to the next round, and they have another shot at it right now. After a break, we're going to be going to Bartosz Ekiert versus Joaquin Salerno, another really, really high-level match. I'm excited for this one, Jamie. I think it's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be cutting to that short break, and we'll be right back with the next match.